The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before the celestial dawn, its dark corridors illuminated by the soft glow of countless stars. High Admiral Li Jin stood tall and proud on the command bridge, his perfectly pressed silver-trimmed uniform reflecting the ambient light from the surrounding control panels. His weathered face showed the experience of countless space battles, yet today brought something entirely new. The holographic display before him showed 3 unknown vessels that had appeared at the edge of Imperial territory. Their design was unlike anything recorded in the extensive Imperial database, sleek, almost artistic in their construction, with smooth lines that seemed to defy conventional spaceship engineering. The ships moved with an unusual grace, their formation precise yet somehow relaxed. These vessels, Li Jin muttered to himself, his fingers thoughtfully stroking his chin. They're either very brave or very foolish. The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he studied their movement patterns. 200 Imperial warships surrounded his flagship, each one a testament to the Empire's military might. Yet these 3 small ships showed no signs of fear or hesitation. Commander Han Dae-sung approached with quick, measured steps, his datapad clutched tightly in his hands. The younger officer's usual confidence seemed slightly shaken as he cleared his throat. "High Admiral, sir, I have the preliminary scan results." Li Jin turned slightly, acknowledging his subordinate while keeping one eye on the mysterious vessels. "Report, Commander." "The ships appear to be of human origin, sir." Han's voice carried a note of confusion. "Our database has no record of this species. They're significantly smaller than our light cruisers, each one barely the size of a transport vessel." "But sir," he paused, double-checking his readings, "our sensors can't properly analyze their hull material. It's as if our scans are being reflected back at us." The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, but Li Jin could sense their unease. Unknown technology always brought risk, but this was different. These ships weren't just unknown. They were impossible to read. "Show me their power signatures," Li Jin ordered, his voice carrying across the bridge. The holographic display shifted, showing energy readings that made several officers gasp. Despite their small size, each vessel radiated power levels that shouldn't have been possible in ships of that size. Li Jin's expression remained neutral, but his mind raced through the implications. 200 warships should have been more than enough to handle 3 small vessels, yet something felt off. The humans, whoever they were, showed neither the fear of the outmatched nor the aggression of the foolhardy. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Park from the communication station, "the unknown vessels are maintaining their position. They've made no aggressive moves, but they've adjusted their formation 3 times in the last few minutes. Each adjustment seems to—" The young officer hesitated. "Seems to what, Lieutenant?" "Sir, each adjustment seems to counter our fleet's tactical advantages. They're positioning themselves perfectly to nullify any attack pattern we might use, all while appearing completely casual about it." Li Jin's jaw tightened slightly. These humans were either incredibly lucky or worryingly skilled. Either way, it was time to establish contact. "Open communications," he commanded, straightening his already perfect posture. The Empire had protocols for first contact situations, but they usually involved species showing proper deference to Imperial might. These humans seemed to be following a different script entirely. As the communications officer worked to establish a connection, Li Jin watched the strange ships continue their elegant dance through space. Despite commanding the most powerful fleet in this sector of the galaxy, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. The human ships were too small, too quiet, too perfect in their movements. The main view screen crackled to life, and the bridge crew held their breath, waiting to see the face of this unknown species. Little did they know, this moment would mark the beginning of a dramatic shift in the balance of galactic power. And the humans' quiet chuckles would soon make perfect sense. The massive view screen on the bridge of the celestial dawn flickered to life without delay. The image that appeared made several bridge officers lean forward in surprise. The human captain looked remarkably similar to their own species, though her features held subtle differences that marked her as alien. Captain Kim Soo-jae sat in what appeared to be a command chair, but the bridge behind her looked nothing like an Imperial vessel. It was smaller, brighter, and somehow more inviting. "Greetings, Admiral," she said in perfect Galactic standard, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed out of place in such a tense situation. "Beautiful ships you have there. Would you be interested in establishing diplomatic relations?" Her smile appeared genuine, and her posture was relaxed, almost casual. Li Jin found himself momentarily speechless. In his 30 years of service, he had never encountered a first-contact situation quite like this. Most species either showed fear or tried to display aggression when meeting the Empire's forces. This human captain acted as if she were greeting an old friend at a social gathering. "You address High Admiral Li Jin of the Galactic Imperial Fleet," he finally responded, his voice carrying the authority of his position. "Your vessels have entered Imperial space without permission. Identify your full purpose here." Captain Kim adjusted slightly in her chair, her smile never wavering. "Of course, Admiral. I represent the Earth Expeditionary Force. We're an exploratory and diplomatic branch of the Human Federation. I must say, your fleet formation is quite impressive. The way you've positioned your heavy cruisers to support your lighter vessels shows excellent tactical thinking." The casual compliment about their fleet positioning made several officers exchange worried glances. The human captain shouldn't have been able to identify their ship classes so easily, let alone understand their tactical arrangement. Li Jin's eyes narrowed slightly. "You stand before the might of the Galactic Empire. Your vessels will submit to inspection, and your species will accept our protection as a protectorate race. This is not a negotiation." The human captain's response was not what anyone expected. She actually chuckled, though the sound held no mockery. "That's an interesting proposal, Admiral. Perhaps we should discuss this over a more detailed conversation. I've taken the liberty of preparing some information about human space that you might find relevant to our discussion." Before Li Jin could respond, his tactical officer spoke up urgently. "Sir, the human vessels are transmitting data. But, sir, they're somehow bypassing our security protocols. The information is appearing directly on our secure systems. Block the transmission." Li Jin ordered sharply. "We can't, sir," the officer replied, his voice shaking slightly. "The data isn't hostile. It's like our best security measures don't even exist to them." Captain Kim's expression remained pleasant, but her eyes showed a hint of amusement. "Don't worry, Admiral. We're simply sharing some basic information about human space and technology. Nothing harmful, though I would direct your attention to the star chart now displaying on your tactical screen." Li Jin turned to look, and for the first time in his career, he felt a chill run down his spine. The map showed human territory, an expanse of space that dwarfed the Empire's borders. More concerning were the highlighted points within Imperial space, hundreds of them, each marking what appeared to be human observation posts that had somehow gone undetected. "As you can see," Captain Kim continued casually, "we've been neighbors for quite some time. We just thought it was finally time to say hello properly. Now about those diplomatic relations I mentioned." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The three small ships before them weren't just exploration vessels. They were representatives of a power that had been watching, studying, and apparently surpassing the Empire without anyone noticing. Li Jin straightened his uniform, buying himself a moment to think. His 200 warships suddenly felt less impressive. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we should indeed have a more detailed conversation, Captain Kim." The human captain's smile broadened. "Wonderful. And please, call me Soo-jae. I have a feeling we're going to be good friends." She glanced at something off-screen and added, "By the way, you might want to adjust the power flow to your third port shield generator. The harmonics are slightly off." The engineering officer's startled confirmation of her observation only added to the growing realization that the Empire had severely underestimated this first contact situation. The humans weren't just advanced, They were operating on a level that made the Empire's best technology look primitive in comparison. Junior Sensor Officer Park Ji-ho sat hunched over his console, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls as he tried to make sense of the readings before him. The young officer's forehead creased with concern as he ran the scans for the third time. The results remained the same, impossible, yet undeniable. "Sir," he called out, his voice carrying across the bridge of the celestial dawn. "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the human vessels. They're unlike anything in our database." He adjusted several settings, hoping to get a clearer reading. The power levels keep shifting. It's as if their ships are breathing. High Admiral Li Jin glanced at the young officer's station, but didn't move from his command position. The Empire had faced strange technologies before, and they had always prevailed. His fleet of 200 warships began to move with practiced precision, each vessel taking its place in a complex attack formation that had conquered 1,000 worlds. "Display the human vessels," Li Jin commanded. The holographic projection showed the 3 small ships, still maintaining their casual position. They made no attempt to counter the Imperial fleet's movements, which only served to irritate the Admiral further. "Sir," another sensor officer called out, "the human ships are, well, they're not doing anything. No power spikes, no shield adjustments, no weapon preparations. They're just floating there." Li Jin's jaw tightened. The humans' apparent lack of concern was more unsettling than any show of force would have been. The massive Imperial warships now surrounded the 3 small vessels completely, their giant forms casting shadows across the human ships' sleek hulls. "Open communication channel," Li Jin ordered. The view screen activated immediately, showing Captain Kim's bridge once again. The human commander sat in the same relaxed posture, a slight smile still playing at the corners of her mouth. "Captain Kim," Li Jin's voice carried the weight of Imperial authority. "Observe the power of the Empire. You have 1 standard hour to submit to our authority and prepare for inspection. This is your final warning." The human captain's pleasant expression never wavered. "Admiral," she replied, her tone remaining conversational. "I don't believe that will be necessary." She glanced down at something off-screen. "By the way, how are your long-range sensors working? Notice anything interesting?" Before Li Jin could respond, alarms began blaring across multiple stations. Officers scrambled to check their readings, their faces showing increasing concern. "Sir," Park Ji-ho called out, his voice cracking slightly. "Long-range sensors are picking up something. Multiple somethings. They're everywhere." The main tactical display updated to show hundreds of new contacts appearing at the edge of their sensor range. Each contact carried energy signatures similar to the 3 small ships before them, but vastly more powerful. "Admiral." Captain Kim's voice cut through the growing chaos on the bridge. "Those would be our actual military vessels. The ones you see here." She gestured to her own ship. "These are just diplomatic shuttles. We thought sending our warships first might seem a bit aggressive." Li Jin's hands gripped his command chair tightly. The tactical display showed more human ships appearing every moment, each one carrying power signatures that dwarfed his own flagship. His fleet's intimidating formation now looked like a small cluster of boats surrounded by an ocean of power. "Interesting tactic, really," Captain Kim continued, as if discussing the weather. "Surrounding diplomatic vessels with military ships. In human history, we found that often led to unfortunate misunderstandings. That's why we prefer to keep our big ships at a respectful distance, unless invited closer, of course." The bridge of the celestial dawn had fallen completely silent. Every officer stared at either their readings or the tactical display, watching as more human ships appeared. The Empire's mighty fleet now looked like children's toys compared to the armada assembling at the edges of their sensor range. "Now then," Captain Kim said brightly, "shall we return to our discussion about diplomatic relations? I believe you'll find our terms quite reasonable. We're really very friendly once you get to know us." Li Jin looked at his tactical display one more time, noting how his fleet's formation, designed to intimidate and overwhelm, had become meaningless in the face of such overwhelming power. Yet the humans had shown no aggression, no threats, just that same infuriating pleasantness. He was beginning to understand why they kept smiling. Senior Technical Officer Yu Minji stared at her console in disbelief. Her hands trembled slightly as she ran another series of deep scans on the human vessels. 20 years of service in the Imperial fleet had taught her to trust her instruments, but what they showed now seemed impossible. "Admiral," she called out, her voice cracking with confusion. "Our scans cannot penetrate their defensive systems." She adjusted several settings, trying different frequencies. "And sir, we're detecting some sort of quantum field technology we've never seen before. It's like they're bending space itself around their ships." The bridge of the Celestial Dawn had become unusually quiet. Only the soft hum of equipment and occasional beeping of sensors broke the tense silence. Li Jin stood at his command position, watching as his officers worked frantically to understand what they were facing. "Sir," called out the weapons officer, "I can't get a targeting lock on any of their vessels. The targeting computers say they're there, but also not there. It's as if they exist in multiple spaces at once." Another officer spoke up from his station. "Admiral, their power signatures are fluctuating in patterns we can't understand. One moment they appear to be simple transport vessels. The next, they show energy readings that shouldn't be possible." Li Jin's confidence, built on decades of Imperial victories, began to waver. His fleet of 200 warships, the pride of the Empire, had taken formation around the 3 human vessels. Yet somehow, without making any aggressive moves, the humans had positioned themselves in a way that made his fleet's tactical advantages meaningless. The tactical display showed something even more disturbing. Each time his ships adjusted their position, the human vessels made tiny, almost imperceptible movements that perfectly countered any potential attack vector. They moved with a precision that seemed to predict his fleet's actions before they happened. Captain Kim's voice came through the communication system again, still carrying that same pleasant tone. "Admiral, would you like to know how long we've been studying your empire?" Before Li Jin could respond, his science officer called out in alarm. "Sir, we're detecting energy patterns similar to the human ships throughout Imperial space. They're everywhere. Hundreds of locations, maybe thousands. Some of these signals appear to be decades old." The implications hit Li Jin like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just appeared at the edge of Imperial space. They had been watching, studying, and analyzing the Empire for years, perhaps generations. Every military secret, every technological advancement, every tactical doctrine the Empire had developed had been observed and understood by these beings who now sat calmly before them in their impossibly advanced ships. "Fascinating technology you have," Captain Kim continued, as if discussing an interesting hobby. "We particularly admired your advancement in plasma containment fields about 15 years ago. Very innovative solution to the resonance problem. Though you might want to watch the particle decay rate in your primary power cores, we noticed it tends to spike under stress." The engineering officer's face went pale. "Sir, she's right about the power cores. But that information is classified at the highest levels. How could they possibly?" Li Jin raised his hand for silence. The pieces were falling into place now, and the picture they formed was both amazing and terrifying. His mighty fleet, the force that had struck fear into 1,000 worlds, had been completely outmaneuvered before the first word was spoken. "I believe," he said carefully, "we should hear what Captain Kim has to say about their observations of our empire." He paused, then added with a hint of dry humor, "Clearly, they'd been very thorough in their research." Captain Kim's smile broadened slightly. "Oh, you have no idea, Admiral. Would you like me to show you what else we've learned? I think you'll find it quite enlightening." The bridge crew of the Celestial Dawn exchanged glances, knowing they were about to discover just how small their mighty empire really was in the grand scheme of things. And somewhere, In the vastness of space around them, more human ships waited silently, their very existence rewriting everything the Empire thought it knew about its place in the galaxy. The revelation struck the bridge of the celestial dawn like a physical force. As Captain Kim shared the data, streams of information flowed across every screen and holographic display. The bridge crew stood frozen, watching as decades of careful human observation unfolded before their eyes. Li Jin's face remained carefully neutral, though his hands gripped the edges of his command station tightly. The displays showed hundreds of human observation posts scattered throughout Imperial space, hidden in plain sight. Their stealth technology had allowed them to monitor every Imperial world, track every fleet movement, and analyze every defense system for the past 50 years. "Impossible," whispered Commander Han, studying the data. "These observation posts, some of them are in our most secure systems, right under the noses of our best detection equipment." Captain Kim's image remained on the main screen, her relaxed demeanor unchanged. "We've been waiting for the right moment to say hello," she explained, gesturing to a series of charts showing Imperial expansion patterns. "Your Empire's growth trajectory indicated we'd meet eventually. We thought it best to be prepared." A junior officer spoke up from his station, his voice shaking slightly. "Sir, some of these observation posts are inside our military installations. They've been recording everything. Ship designs, weapon specifications, shield frequencies. Not just military data," added another officer, scrolling through the information. "Cultural information, language patterns, social structures, technological development paths. They'd been studying everything about us." Li Jin watched in stunned silence as the holographic displays shifted to show the true extent of human space. The Empire's territory, which had seemed so vast and impressive just hours ago, appeared as a small cluster compared to the enormous federation that spread across the galactic map. "As you can see," Captain Kim continued, "we've had plenty of time to understand your civilization. We've watched your empire grow, studied your technologies, learned your languages. We've even helped occasionally, though you might not have noticed." "Helped?" Li Jin found his voice. "What do you mean, helped?" Captain Kim's smile widened slightly. "Remember that mysterious solution to the Karvik systems plague 3 years ago? Or the sudden breakthrough in quantum communications that your scientists made last year? We may have nudged things along a bit. Subtly, of course." The implications staggered the bridge crew. The Empire's proudest achievements, their most significant breakthroughs, how many had been guided by unseen human hands? "Your civilization shows great promise," Captain Kim said, her tone gentle. "We've watched you overcome challenges, solve problems, advance your technology. But we've also seen your mistakes, your wars, your struggles. We wanted to understand you fully before making contact." New data appeared on the screens, detailed analyses of Imperial society, predictions of technological development, assessments of cultural evolution. The humans hadn't just been watching. They had been comprehending, evaluating, understanding the Empire at a level deeper than the Empire understood itself. "Sir," called out the sensor officer, "I'm detecting energy signatures matching these human observation posts. They're everywhere. In asteroid fields, inside gas giants, even in some of our space stations. We've been completely surrounded for decades." Li Jin slowly sank into his command chair, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him. His mighty fleet, the 200 warships that had seemed so impressive, now felt like children's toys compared to the civilization they faced. "I understand this is a lot to process," Captain Kim said kindly. "Take your time. We've waited 50 years to have this conversation. We can certainly wait a few more minutes while you absorb the information." The bridge crew continued to study the data, each new detail revealing more about how thoroughly they had been studied, how completely they had been understood. The humans had mapped not just their space, but their potential, their possibilities, their future. And through it all, Captain Kim watched patiently, her gentle smile suggesting that the biggest revelations were yet to come. The silence on the bridge of the Celestial Dawn grew deeper as Captain Kim's words echoed through the command center. Her image remained on the main screen, still wearing that same gentle smile that now carried new meaning. "Our ships," she continued, gesturing to the 3 vessels that had caused such alarm, "are actually just diplomatic vessels. Small ones, at that. We thought sending our military ships might seem intimidating." She paused, letting the words sink in. "These are essentially what you might call courier ships." Li Jin sank deeper into his command chair as the implications became crystal clear. His mighty fleet, 200 of the Empire's finest warships, had been posturing against what were essentially human diplomatic shuttles. The realization felt like a physical weight on his shoulders. Senior analyst Choi Hanna stood at her station, her fingers trembling slightly as she reviewed the latest sensor data. "Sir," she spoke softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "their energy output readings, they could have disabled our entire fleet at any time." She looked up from her console, face pale. "And these are their smallest ships." The tactical display continued to show the positions of their ships surrounding the 3 human vessels. What had seemed like an intimidating formation now looked almost comical, like cubs trying to threaten a sleeping predator. "You know," Captain Kim said conversationally, "we actually debated sending one of our standard diplomatic cruisers instead. But the size difference might have caused some concern." She touched a control on her chair, bringing up a new holographic image. "This is one of our regular diplomatic vessels." The image showed a ship that dwarfed even the Celestial Dawn. The bridge crew stared in silence at the massive vessel, trying to comprehend the scale of what they were seeing. "Of course," Captain Kim continued, "that's still quite small compared to our actual military ships. Would you like to see those?" "No," Li Jin said quickly, raising a hand. "I believe we understand the situation." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Though I am curious why you chose to reveal all this to us now." Captain Kim's expression softened slightly. "Because you're ready. We've watched your empire grow, seen how you handle both success and failure. Despite some missteps, you've shown potential. We believe it's time for your civilization to join the larger galactic community." A young officer at the communications station suddenly straightened. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from everywhere. Other species, other civilizations we've never encountered. They're all sending greetings." The main screen split to show multiple diplomatic representatives from various species, each one more advanced than the Empire had ever encountered. They had all been there, watching, waiting, following humanity's lead. "You see," Captain Kim explained, "humanity isn't just technologically advanced. We're also very good at bringing people together. We've been coordinating with these other civilizations, preparing for the day when the Empire would be ready to join us." Li Jin looked around his bridge, at the officers who had served him faithfully through countless battles and campaigns. Each face showed the same mix of awe and humility he felt himself. "The Empire has always thought of itself as a superior force," he said slowly. "We believed we were bringing order and advancement to the galaxy. But all this time, Captain Kim finished gently, you were the ones being guided. The question now is, are you ready to learn? To join something larger than empire building? To become part of a community that spans not just space, but possibilities you haven't yet imagined?" The bridge crew looked to their admiral, waiting for his response. Li Jin stood from his command chair, straightened his uniform, and faced the screen with newfound humility. "Captain Kim," he said formally, "I believe it's time we had that detailed diplomatic discussion you mentioned earlier." The human captain's smile broadened. "Wonderful. And please, call me Suje. After all, we're about to become very good friends." She glanced at something off-screen and added with a touch of amusement, "Though perhaps we should move this conversation to a more comfortable setting. Your flagship's secondary power coupling is starting to show strain from maintaining battle stations for so long." The Empire's mightiest fleet remained in formation, but now it was no longer a display of power. It was witnessing the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. And somewhere in the vastness of space, countless advanced civilizations watched with approval as humanity once again proved its skill at shepherding younger species into a greater understanding of the universe. 3 days of intense diplomatic discussions concluded with a historic agreement between the Empire and the Human Federation. The massive conference room aboard the Celestial Dawn buzzed with activity as officials from both sides finalized the details of their new partnership. Li Jin watched the proceedings with a sense of wonder, still processing how completely his understanding of the galaxy had changed. Captain Kim Sujai stood beside him at the observation window, both of them watching as staff members hurried about with datapads and documents. "You know," she said casually, "this went much better than our first contact with the Rigelian Empire. They actually tried to fire on our ships." "What happened to them?" Li Jin asked, curious despite himself. Sujai smiled. "They're now one of our closest allies. Sometimes the rocky starts lead to the strongest friendships." She turned to face him. "Your Empire's response was actually quite measured, all things considered." As the final documents were signed, and the meeting drew to a close, Li Jin watched the human ships prepare for departure. Their sleek forms seemed different to him now, no longer mysterious threats, but reminders of how much his people had yet to learn. 6 months passed quickly. The Imperial Academy's Grand Lecture Hall filled with eager students as Li Jin stepped up to the podium. His new position as Professor of Human Studies felt strange after decades of military command, but he had discovered a passion for teaching that surprised him. "Today's lesson," he began, looking out at the young faces before him, "starts with a simple question. Why do you think the humans chuckled when we first met them?" A young cadet raised her hand. "Because they were so much more powerful than us." "No," Li Jin replied, pacing slowly across the stage. "Power alone doesn't create amusement. The humans laughed because they understood something we didn't. That true strength lies not in the ability to defeat others, but in the wisdom to avoid unnecessary conflict." He activated the holographic display, showing images from that first contact. "Look at their ships. Even their diplomatic vessels could have easily overcome our fleet. Yet they chose to talk, to smile, to extend friendship. They had been watching us for 50 years, helping us grow, guiding our development from the shadows." Another student spoke up. "But why didn't they just conquer us? They clearly could have." Li Jin smiled, remembering asking Captain Kim the same question. "Because that's not who they are. Humanity's greatest strength isn't their advanced technology or their vast territory. It's their ability to face potential conflict with a smile and choose peace when war would have been easier." He showed more images, human diplomatic missions to other species, successful first contacts, growing alliances. They'd done this hundreds of times across the galaxy, finding developing civilizations, watching them grow, helping them advance, and finally welcoming them into a larger community. The lecture hall fell silent as he displayed the final image, the current galactic map showing the network of civilizations now linked through human diplomatic efforts. "The humans could have built an empire that dwarfed ours through force," Li Jin continued. "Instead, they built something far more valuable, a federation of equals, each civilization contributing its unique strengths to the whole." He thought back to those tense moments on his bridge, when he had thought his fleet so powerful. They chuckled not at our weakness, but at our potential. They saw what we could become, not what we were. As the lecture ended, Li Jin looked out at his students, the future leaders of the Empire. "Remember this lesson well," he said softly. "The humans taught us that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to nurture. Not in the force of arms, but in the strength of a smile and an extended hand." The students filed out, but Li Jin remained at his podium, lost in thought. Outside the academy windows, he could see one of the new human diplomatic stations orbiting the capital world. Its presence was a constant reminder of how far they had come, and how far they had yet to go. And somewhere out there, he knew, human ships were making contact with other developing civilizations, greeting them with that same patient smile, ready to guide another species toward a greater understanding of the galaxy and their place in it. The Empire was learning, growing, changing, and Li Jin couldn't help but smile himself, finally understanding why the humans had chuckled that day. They hadn't been laughing at the Empire. They had been laughing with joy at welcoming new friends into the galactic community.